what innocence looks like right there.
What do you think, Mary?
Iris, do you want to come over here?
I'm good. I'll come back.
Okay. Barry, is there anything you want to say?
Can you discuss what the motion for dismissal discussed about their continuing investigation towards possibly finding a body?
First, I want to say that Mr. Morphew not only was presumed innocent and still is presumed innocent, he is innocent. And these charges were false from the beginning. The affidavit that was filed in this case was egregious and wrong and had so many misstatements that carried it through to a preliminary hearing where more lies and perjury were committed in order to get Mr. Morphew wrongfully convicted. Now we know today from the motion to dismiss that was filed by Ms. Stanley in her office that the reason why they're dismissing it is because now they believe that they need to find a body in order to proceed with any kind of charge against somebody who might be responsible for her disappearance. Today is the first day the prosecution has ever stated that that would be a consideration in a charge of murder against another person, including Mr. Morphew. Forever they have stated that they don't need a body, that a body is irrelevant. But you need to know that in this case, there has been not a single ounce of physical evidence that has been found connecting Mr. Morphew to this alleged crime. In fact, there's DNA that is placed on all the critical items of evidence in this case, on the bike helmet, in the house, in the car, that is linked to unknown males and has been linked to convicted sex offenders in this country. And the prosecution has chosen not to follow those leads. Instead, they have done one thing, which is focused in on Mr. Morphew and ignored everything and every type of evidence that would seem to turn them away from Mr. Morphew. We were going to get Mr. Morphew acquitted rightly after a trial that we believed we were going to have. But all of a sudden now, today, in the face of the fact that they have committed so much misconduct, they decided to dismiss the case, claiming that there is a body that they're close to finding up in the mountains that are snow covered by nearby where Mr. Morphew's house was. We have not seen any indication in any of the discovery that we've been given, which has been terabytes and terabytes of information.
What was Barry's reaction and the daughter's reaction when they heard this news?
Barry and his daughters are relieved, but they're sad because they too want to know where Suzanne Morphew is. You know, there's been a lot of press and different types of social media, just like you, Lauren, who have really made a case that Barry's guilty. And the community has really done a poor job. And shame on the media and shame on the people in the press who've jumped to conclusions in this case.
It's really unfair to say.
It's not unfair to say, Lauren Sharp. You were participating in the fact that this community was actually believed wrongfully that Mr. Morphew is guilty when there's not even an ounce of evidence against him. And this case was moved from Chaffee County because partly of what you did in this case, you and Miss Stanley did in this case, in order to prejudice the jurors that potentially would have been sad.
In the courtroom.
This right now, we are dealing with a family that is grieving their missing mother and their wife. Barry Morphew loves Suzanne Morphew. He loves her and he misses her and he wants to know where Suzanne Morphew is. It's a big question mark. It's a big question mark. Definitely, there was not any evidence, even close to convicting him of murder of his wife. Instead, what their evidence is that she could have left and or she could have been abducted. And the evidence is way stronger for both of those possibilities than anything far from Mr. Morphew having the ability to murder his loving wife that he had for 30 years.
Iris, are you disappointed that you don't get to see this through to the trial?
I am. I believe that if we had had a trial, the community, the people who have been searching for Suzanne, the critics, the suspects, would have seen the truth. They would have seen the truth in this case that was starting to eke out as we were doing and filing different kinds of motions and having hearings in this case. And now we've lost that ability to present the truth. That's what the courtroom is for, the truth. Everything outside of the courtroom is suspicion, is guessing, is conjecture, hunches, and that's pretty much where this community is sitting right now. The community wrongfully is going to believe that Barry just got away with murder. But you know what was about to happen? The prosecution was manufacturing a murder case. You've seen shows called Making a Murderer? That's what was happening here in this courtroom. They were making a murderer. Prosecutorial abuse has never been seen this widespread in my entire career of 30 years. These prosecutors have committed so much misconduct, and they're trying to escape it by filing a motion to dismiss in order to escape from all of that, and hopefully that maybe some other judge will allow them to refile it and ignore and put all this behind the curtain. It's not going to happen. The Morphews right now are going to live their life and grieve their missing mother and their missing wife. And they have to do something to try and find the means to move on, especially in the light if you hear the prosecution say the case is still under investigation. I'll tell you right now, I have not seen an ounce of investigation occur in this case since Mr. Morphew was arrested. And any investigation that has come from the prosecution since he was arrested points in every direction other than to Mr. Morphew. Every other direction. When CBI said that they called the Sheriff Speasy, and said, stand down. You should not arrest. It's too early. It's premature. They knew what they were saying. They knew exactly what they were saying. It was premature because guess what? We're hearing it now 10 days before trial. No body. There's no evidence. And they locked Mr. Morphew up for 5 months in a jail cell. 5 months. Other people need to be locked up in a jail cell, and it's not Mr. Morphew.
What do you and Mr. Morphew think happened to Suzanne?
You know what? Because the investigation only pointed to the direction of Mr. Morphew, we don't know. Because law enforcement took absolutely zero steps to actually find out what happened to her. You know, searching Mr. Morphew's 5-mile radius of his residence turned out to be nothing. 70,000 hours, man-hours to try and find her. Can't find her. Well, maybe it would be a thought if law enforcement used all their rich resources and they actually looked elsewhere, looked for her being abandoned, follow these leads that they had from these CODIS matches of sex offenders that were involved in crimes in other states that were linked to the car that Miss Morphew owned and that was in her garage. Follow the leads. They didn't. They didn't follow the leads.
Because this case was dismissed without prejudice, like you didn't want to see happen today, how confident are you that they'll try to recharge it?
They're not going to recharge this case because they're not going to find a body that was linked to Mr. Morphew. And the prosecution is saying right now in their motion, and I don't take much of their word to be true, actually, but if you take their word to be true, they're saying that they will not refile the case unless they find a body.
I think they dismissed charges because they thought they were going to lose this trial.
Yes, they absolutely dismissed this case at this point because they knew they were going to lose this trial and Mr. Morphew was going to be acquitted and exonerated.
Now that this is, you don't think that they would try to get those expert witnesses qualified back as far as if they followed discovery rules and try to refile without a body?
The expert witnesses would not make a difference in whether or not they were able to convict Mr. Morphew because our expert witnesses were not going to give them the evidence that Mr. Morphew was guilty. In fact, the opposite. Their expert witnesses were saying that this thing called the chipmunk map of him running around the house, not true. They were saying that the airplane mode, not true. every single theory that the prosecution put forward in their affidavit in order to try and get the judge, and did get a judge, to put him behind bars for 5 months, not true. Their experts were not going to further any type of conviction, and in fact, their experts probably were going to help us get the acquittal fast and quick that we know that Mr. Morphew was going to get if we had gotten to go to trial.
And now that this has all been settled and the judge made his decision, where do you and the Morphews go from here?
You know, I know that the Morphews have been under so much stress and pain and agony over the last 2 years with the spotlight on them. And I don't have an answer to where we all go from here. I will tell you where I'm going to go from here. I'm going to do something about prosecutorial abuse in this state and in this country. They get away with doing what they did in this case over and over again, which is why they continue to do it. And you know, in this case, they did it on such a high-profile case with this team that had to catch every single time that they lied and made misstatements. People who are represented by the public defender's office don't have the luxury of the resources that Mr. Morphew was able to put forward. And so we wonder how many innocent people, how many wrongfully convicted people has the 11th Judicial District put behind bars based on the conduct that we're seeing in this case with this spotlight that it was. So my intent is to change the way that people perceive prosecutors who are peace officers. They're law enforcement officers, and they're held to a higher standard. And they certainly didn't show it here.
District Attorney Linda Stanley hasn't been in court in months. She was the one who was speaking in front of the microphones about a year ago when Barry was first arrested. Did it surprise you that this was the first time that she was in court in months when she was dismissing charges?
Yeah, frankly, it did surprise me that this was the first time I've seen Ms. Stanley in court, other than the 2 other times. So Ms. Stanley was in front of cameras just like this at the press conference, making unethical statements that she should not have been making, that the court issued a gag order on her in October of 2021 as a result of. Then we see Ms. Stanley for a second time in the preliminary hearing asking some questions of Alex Walker in the preliminary hearing. And then the third time that we see Linda Stanley, the only other time, was when we subpoenaed the elected district attorney to a hearing questioning whether or not she knew that the arrest was premature. And Ms. Stanley did not quash the subpoena. Any other district attorney in the entire country is not going to just get a subpoena from a defense lawyer and stroll up to the witness stand and testify under oath. But Ms. Stanley did because she's brazen about this case and about her wrong beliefs about it, and seems to be so doggedly, honestly, ignorant about the case that she had. And when she testified, Ms. Stanley said under oath, the reason I fired Joe Cahill, who they've thrown under the bus and ruined his life, this individual who was the lead investigator in the Morphew case from day one, she said, the reason I fired she didn't use the word fired, but she said the reason why I wanted him let go and off this case was because he didn't follow the script that Mark Hurlbert gave him regarding the CODIS match, regarding this unknown male sex offender that was the DNA that was found on Suzanne Morphew's car. That's the only time, 3 times that we've seen Miss Stanley, and then today, yes, I was extremely surprised that she came in, and she came in, and this actually follows a communication I was having with Mr. Hurlbert about the missing discovery in this case, where I emailed both him and Miss Stanley. And this is in the pleadings. It's an exhibit in the pleadings. It's actually attached to D73 Exhibit 1, where I include her asking where is the raw data from the cell phone towers. And the response that Mark Hurlbert gave me was, why are you including Linda Stanley in these emails? She has nothing to do with this. Why are you including her? So I actually said, well, I'm surprised you're asking me, because she was doing a press conference. She's at the preliminary hearing. Her name is on the affidavit to arrest. She's the one that wanted this arrest of this man. She came to the preliminary hearing. She's the one that's in charge of the entire case, and yet now you don't want me to email her and involve her in the discovery issues that she's responsible for? That was shocking. So those are the 4 times that I've actually had any kind of interaction with you, Stanley.
Did you know this was coming today?
You know, I didn't know a dismissal was coming today, although the writing was on the wall as a result of the judge's absolutely very conservative findings. Honestly, the judge should have dismissed this case. I don't fault the judge. The judge didn't find there to be willful pattern. He found there to be a pattern of neglect and reckless conduct. But we believe today we had more information, more discovery violations, that we believe the judge would have been able to find willful misconduct and dismiss the case. So I'm not surprised in that the way that the case had landed, that they had to dismiss the case under, they believe that that evidence was so critical to them, and they stated that it was critical to them. I'm just surprised it happened today.
You say that there's no evidence in the case that points to Mr. Morphew. How would you classify the needle sheath that was found in his dryer and the text message from Suzanne's phone that said she was missing?
That's great. I'm going to talk about the needle sheath. So the needle sheath, we don't know where that needle sheath came from. We don't know what it was used for. We don't know if it was used for Suzanne Morphew's port that she had, because she had a port as a result of her chemo. We don't know if that needle sheath was used because Mr. Morphew is diabetic. We don't know what that needle sheath came from. But we do know a few things. That needle sheath didn't have Mr. Morphew's DNA on it. That's what it didn't have on it. It had other people's DNA on it, including law enforcement officers. But so we know it wasn't cleansed in some way. So it had, and it was just lying at the bottom of a dryer drum with a bunch of other clothes and sheets. It wasn't, in a pair of shorts that were Mr. Morphew's as he's walking around and had his DNA all over it. And or Miss Morphew's DNA, for the matter. It didn't have her DNA on it either. So that's how I explain this red herring that the prosecution tried to use as a method to get everyone excited about how he could have murdered her, because there's no blood anywhere. So how could he have done it without any blood? So they allegedly found this needle sheath that was conveniently there 10 days after they had searched the entire dryer. The whole dryer was searched, photographed, swabbed, everything. And 10 days later, it was an aha moment. We played in the preliminary hearing where the police officer finds this needle sheath and you hear it drop, clink, 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 clink. And he calls back to his fellow officer and he says, "Hey, did you see this? I have something that's going to make you very happy." Quote, that's the needle sheath. And the texts that are found in Miss Morphew's phone, it's funny that they produce one text message in her phone of messages that we know are pinging all over the place. And something that we know, they keep saying there's proof of life. What the prosecution knows and the public doesn't know is that her phone was making phone calls when she was supposedly dead on March 9th in the evening. Her computer was working on May 9th when she was supposedly dead. So the evidence that has been revealed through the affidavit is incorrect and false. So that's what I think of those 2 evidentiary items.
How many people are on your team, do you say?
It takes really a lot of people to fight the government. So right here, there's 7 of us standing here, and it's been, and there's more that just aren't standing here, but there's more people that have been involved in, cataloging the discovery and indexing what we have, knowing what we don't have, and including, the experts we've had to consult with to figure out really what the truth is. So, it's been a massive effort, and, if Mr. Morphew didn't have the resources, he could be wrongfully convicted. And that's a statement about our justice system, is that prosecutors are so powerful. They wield such threat to our safety and peace and justice, and they abused it in this case. And who knows how many other people that don't have these resources they abuse. Thank
Could we
you.
just have you say and spell your name really quick?
Yes, my name is Iris Eaton. It's spelled IRISEYTAN.
Thank you so much for watching, and do not forget to subscribe, like, share, and leave us a comment below on your thoughts of this video. And until next time, this is UnJustified.